Hello. In this video, we're going to be talking about nomenclature of alkanes. In organic chemistry, each and every compound has a specific name. And in this video, we'll be talking about these names. Let's start with the names of the alkanes. So, first of all, if you have unbranched alkanes, if you have linear alkanes, what you need to do to name it is just to learn these 10 words. If you have only one carbon atom, it's called methane. 2 carbon atoms, it is called ethane. 3 carbon atoms, propane, and so on. However, in many of the cases, you don't have a linear carbon chain only, but you have some branches. These branches might be made up of carbon atom. For example, this is methane molecule. If you want to add this methane molecule as it is, you cannot add anywhere because it's already making, this carbon atom is already making 1, 2, 3, 4 connections. However, if it loses, if this alkane loses one hydrogen atom like this, now in this case you can add it to somewhere, to some other carbon atom. Now, at the beginning the compound was an alkane. When you take one hydrogen out from an alkane, what you get is called an alkyl group. A similar thing happens with ethane. So this is our ethane. When you take, you cannot add this one anywhere because both carbon atoms are making 4 connections. But if you take one hydrogen out, this ethane molecule becomes an ethyl group, which could be added to somewhere. So, in addition to these alkyl groups, you can also add some halogens to the carbon chains as well. Chlorine becomes chloro in the nomenclature and bromine becomes bromo. Now let's see the rules. The first rule says that we need to determine the parent name. Parent name comes from the longest continuous carbon chain. For example, if you have a chain like this, obviously the parent name is going to be butane. If you had one carbon atom in here, the parent name is not going to change because the longest chain still is 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if you start from here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Still 4 carbon atoms, so the parent name is still butane. I'm adding one more carbon atom in here, it's still butane. I'm adding one more carbon atom here, it's still butane because it's still 1, 2, 3, 4. You cannot find the longer chain. 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you add, for example, one more carbon atom, let's say to this one, then in that case your main chain becomes this one. Longest continuous carbon chain contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbon atoms. So the parent name this time becomes a pentane. What about these 1, 2, 3 carbon atoms? They are our substituents, branches. If you write the hydrogen atoms, you're going to see that this is making one connection, so this is a CH3 group. These actually, all these carbon atoms actually are methyl groups. So, first rule says determine the parent name. We have determined that. But determination of the parent name is sometimes not enough. Think about this one. You have 3 carbon atoms, all single bonds, so it is propane. Now, if you say that you have a chlorine in here, okay, it's gonna be chloropropane, fine. But if you try to name this one, this compound, this is again propane because you have 3 carbon atoms, and you have chlorine, so it's gonna be again chloropropane. This is chloropropane, that's chloropropane. But are they the same compounds? They're not. Because in here chlorine is attached to the first carbon atom, in here it is attached to the second carbon atom in the middle. So in such a case, we need to use numbers. When we are using these numbers, we need to pay attention to the substituted carbon atom. Substituted carbon atom should be given the smallest possible number. So this is my substituted carbon atom. So if I start from the left hand side, it's going to be 1, 2, 3. If you start from right hand side, it's going to be 1, 2, 3. But I want these to have smallest number, so it's going to be 1. So 1, 2, 3. So the name of this compound will be 1-chloropropane. In this case, my chlorine is, if you start on the left hand side, it's going to be 1, 2, 3. If you start from right hand side, it's going to be 1, 2, 3. It doesn't matter, it's on the second carbon atom, so the name of this compound is 2-chloropropane. if you have your chlorine on this carbon atom, okay, you again have 1, 2, 3 carbon atoms. It still is propane, but this time the important carbon atom for us is this one, because it is the substituted one. So then I'll need to start numbering from here. 1, 2, 3. So it still is 1 chloropropane. It actually is the same thing with the first one. You just rotated the molecule. So in some cases we need to use prefixes as well. This is the case when we have more than one same kind of branching. For example, let's continue with the same thing. So let's say that we have propane, 3 carbon atoms. I have one chlorine in here and another chlorine in here. Then in this case, when we are naming this one, it's still propane. Let's write this time. But I have one chlorine and another chlorine. When you have 2 of the same thing, the prefix is going to be di. When you have 3 of it, it's going to be a 3. When you have 4, it's going to be tetra. I think this is enough for us. So this is going to be chloropropane. Chloropropane. But since I have 2 chlorines, it's going to be dichloropropane. But actually this is not enough. Why? Because I don't know where my chlorines are. One of them is on the 1, 2, 3. One of them is on the first carbon atom. Other one is on the second carbon atom. So I'm going to say 1, 2, dichloropropane. So between numbers I'm using get, comma. Between number and letter I'm using a dash. And finally the last rule. It says follow the alphabetical order. So if you have more than one branches, when you're mentioning about them, you need to follow the alphabetical order. For example, if you have methyl group attached, bromine attached, and chlorine attached, you first need to mention about bromine, then chlorine, then methyl group. Let's have such a chain. Carbon, 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 carbon. So I want to have a bromine in here, then one chlorine maybe in here, and one methyl group in here. Okay? Let's try to name this compound. Now, first of all, you need to determine the parent name. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 carbon atoms, so the parent name is butane. Then, you need to number the carbon atoms. When you start from the left-hand side, numbers are going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 4. If you start from the right-hand side, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. You need to choose the smallest combination. Which one is smaller? 1, 2, 4 or 1, 3, 4? Of course, 1, 2, 4 is smaller, so I will be choosing that one. Then I am going to be looking at the alphabetical order. So I will mention about bromine first. It's on the 4th position, so I say 4, bromo. Then on the first one I have chlorine, 1, chloro. And on the 2nd position I have methyl, so 2, methyl butane. 4 bromo, 1 chloro, 2 methyl butane is the correct name for this compound. That's all for today. Goodbye.